Welcome to Soul Snackin with Dr. Mary Amore. I'm Dr. Mary, and I'm here with my co-host Lauren Nelson, and we are delighted to welcome you to a new episode sponsored by Mayslake Ministries of Downers Grove. Let me tell you a little bit about Mayslake Ministries. We are a not-for-profit ministry whose mission is to engage Catholics in a modern world, and we do this through a wide variety of avenues, including individual spiritual direction and counseling, weekend retreats, adult enrichment programs, inspiring blogs, videos, books, and television shows. Mayslake Ministries is also the only organization in the Midwest to offer free spiritual outreach to our military men and women who suffer from PTSD, the hidden and moral wounds of war. Over the years, we have helped hundreds of soldiers begin their spiritual process to healing and wholeness. Some of our other specialized programs include Sacred Presence, a 10-month intensive program for the formation of spiritual directors, a mom's ministry, our new men's ministry, and our newest interior prayer series entitled In Search of the Beloved. The programs and services offered by Mayslake Ministries are relevant to the ever-changing needs of today's believer. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, Mayslake Ministries has a program or service to help you. All people are welcome at Mayslake Ministries. For more information on our wide range of programs and services, I invite you to visit our website at mayslakeministries.org and follow us on Facebook to see the many ways that we can assist you on your walk with Christ. It is my hope that this TV show, Soul Snackin, will serve up some delicious and nourishing ways to feed your hungry spirit. We've got a great show for you today. Joining us is Stepien, a Catholic author of 2 outstanding books, Dying to Be Happy and 3 Days, The Search for the Boy Messiah. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Mary.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here because you're going to be doing some work for us, which we're going to be talking about later. But you know, in the course of getting to know you and everything, and reading your story, because everybody's story is sacred, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about the story, most especially about your parents, because that really touched my heart.
Oh, you're speaking of Dying to Be Happy, Discovering the Truth About Life, which was actually inspired by a breast cancer diagnosis for my wife, Ellen, on our wedding anniversary. Oh. It was a grace in a whiff of death. And in the book is not about Ellen's breast cancer journey, although there are aspects of it woven throughout the book. The book is really about embracing our mortality. And now, as I think back, having written the book a couple years ago, as I think back, there were many points in my life where I either faced death myself directly. For example, I was held up at gunpoint when I was in high school, working in a drugstore, looking down the barrel of a gun. But also, I heard stories that should have gotten my attention. Growing up as a kid, my parents are immigrants from Poland. They had front row seats for World War II. And so my mom was 10 when the Nazi invasion began. My dad would have been about 18. And my mom was actually captured by the Gestapo. The Gestapo usually liked to send a message whenever the Polish underground took some action, and they came into her village. They were going to arrest a lot of people, and my mom got word from an aunt who came racing through her home, and she ran out into the fields. They were farmers. And she was running toward the woods, the family woods, if you will, a little forest, hoping to hide there because the underground would be there, so the Nazis would unlikely go. And as she's running, she sees this great big woman trying to hide in this little tree, and she's thinking, find a bigger tree. Right. She keeps running, and shots are fired. She hits the turf, and she's captured, rounded up with dozens and dozens of other people, so many that they're spilling off the road as they're marching toward the train. And just prior to people being pushed onto the train by the Nazis, the Gestapo permitted people in the community to bring food. for the long trip. And my mom, incidentally, this was the fall, she had grabbed a tablecloth off the table to wrap around her shoulders when she ran out in the field because there wasn't even time to grab a coat or a jacket.
Wow.
And so my grandmother, seeing this, along with some other relatives, said, take that wrap off your shoulders and bundle it up. And they acted like she was among the people who had brought the food and she was able to slip away. Otherwise, you'd be talking to a different guy today.
Right.
So the moral of the story for me is, the reason for looking back on that is that day, Jesus didn't call her home. Also, the woman who climbed up and hid in the tree, she wasn't caught.
Really?
Unbelievably.
Wow.
The aunt who ran through my mom's home and who ended up hiding in a barrel in someone's mudroom, she wasn't captured. Moral of the story is, we're all going to die. It's just a question of when, where, and how. So what are we here for? And Ellen, my wife Ellen's breast cancer diagnosis was a wake-up call for me. I had had my own experience years earlier, but it was a wake-up call for me that said, Chris, there's nothing that you're certain of except your death. It's the only thing that everybody has to do in life. In fact, the doctor, the oncologist, had said to Ellen, this is what caused me to write the book. I actually began writing it right in the doctor's office.
Really?
Yeah, I had brought my laptop because I thought I'd take some notes. You know, when you go to a doctor for cancer, you're going to meet the surgeon, you're going to meet the oncologist.
Yes.
There's lots of information. And I thought maybe I could journal. So anyway, he says to Ellen, he says, well, you're going to start with chemotherapy, and you know, we've got really good drugs today, so I can almost guarantee that you're not going to have nausea and vomiting. He says, but I can definitely guarantee you're going to lose your hair. And I thought, well-intentioned, but we can't guarantee anything.
Right.
Because you don't know if she's going to die of this, if she's going to trip on her shoelace in the parking lot and hit her head on a parking stall. Sounds silly, but we don't know when, where, and how. The only thing we know is that we are going to die. My mom, the young gal who had escaped from the Gestapo, well, she's 89 and a half in a couple days and still here.
Oh my God, God bless.
Lord willing, we'll celebrate her 90th this November. So that's the moral of that story.
You have, and see, that's what comes out in these readings. You really take real life situations and you bring the spirituality into it. You bring Jesus into it, because as you say, as we say, it's the truth. He's the truth, right? But now, so you weren't always a Catholic writer.
No, I was baptized Catholic shortly after birth, so I've always been Catholic.
Right.
But no, I studied electronic journalism and marketing in college. I worked for the ABC owned and operated station in Detroit, and then I had collaborated and co-founded a marketing and advertising company, video film production company. And so I had a lot of media experiences. But never wrote a book. I wrote a lot of film, a lot of video, wrote stuff for presentations, for shows, but not a book. And the first book that I wrote, 3 Days, The Search for the Boy Messiah, came out of my prayer life. When life brought me to my knees, when I had reached my limit. So being a good Catholic boy, I reached for my rosary. This is about 2000. And I made a kind of an arrogant deal with Mary. I said, Mary, Mother of Jesus, I'm going to make a deal. I'm going to pray 1 decade of the rosary a day. 1. And I need you to get me closer to your son. Now, for those people watching who are unfamiliar with the rosary, there are 5 decades in a rosary plus a few other beads. And each decade is symbolic of a particular gospel story.
Correct.
It might be the birth of Jesus. It might be the wedding at Cana. It might be the Last Supper and the establishment of communion or the Eucharist. It might be the crucifixion or the resurrection, etc. So we're supposed to contemplate that story while we're saying those Hail Marys, which are sort of like a mantra. You know, they're probably echoing in heaven. It's one of God's greatest hits, right?
Absolutely.
love that.
The Ave Maria, right?
So saying the rosary while you're doing this inspired you to write the book?
Well, thanks for asking that. There's a little more to it. So when I was going through some struggles that brought me to my knees, a friend of mine took me to a retreat at a Jesuit retreat house, the same order that Pope Francis
I was
belongs
just
to.
going to say
And they're among the founder of the Jesuits was a swashbuckling Spanish knight, Saint Ignatius of Loyola. I call him Saint Iggy for short. And he's famous for many things, but one of the most profound things that anyone should be able to relate to is called the Ignatian spiritual exercises. So think of taking your soul to the gym, but it's really easy. He was very much in touch with his humanity. He said, look, the best way to read the gospel is to pretend you're there. Pretend you're one of the characters. So I began to do that while I was usually walking through the neighborhood for exercise. And I would start to contemplate these mysteries. And, maybe I was a shepherd at the scene of the Nativity. Or maybe I was on the streets on Pentecost Sunday when the apostles came out. Or I was partying at the wedding of Cana. Drinking that like amazing wine.
You have to use your imagination. Exactly.
And then you smell things. And you hear things. I mean, not like hearing voices. But you're
right there. You put yourself in there.
If you're at the Jordan River, you're hearing water,
And for our listeners, what purpose is it to do that? Why?
It's a very deep, personal way to pray.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden, it becomes real. It's not just some story that happened 2,000 years ago that you can't relate to because everyone's wearing sandals. It becomes real, and it changes the way that you look at and look at the story and hear the words. So I would go around, and it would take me, there are 20 mysteries, and so it would take me 20 days to get through them all. And I would go through this one story. It's called the fifth joyful mystery, the finding in the temple. Anyone who's Christian knows the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verses 41 to 52, is the one and only story about Jesus as a youth. He's 12 years old. He goes to Jerusalem with his mom and dad and the Nazareth community in a caravan down to Jerusalem, the big city, right?
Yes.
And they go for Passover. And in those days, it was about a week celebration. And they celebrate and they leave and they get a day out of town, and Mary and Joseph say, Jesus isn't with us. And they panic. And they're panicked. They go looking for him. This is every parent's worst nightmare.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like losing your kid in New York or Chicago or New Delhi without your cell service. All right? It goes dead. And so they find him, according to Scripture, 3 days later, and he's in the temple, amazing the scribes and scholars with his wisdom and his questions. And his mother says, son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been searching with great anxiety. And Jesus says, why were you searching? Didn't you know I must be in my Father's house? And then according to Scripture, his parents didn't understand exactly what he was saying. They went back. Mary kept this in her heart. They went back to Nazareth, and according to Scripture, he grew in wisdom and stature. He was obedient to them. And the next thing you see, he's 30-some years old, and he begins his ministry. So I began thinking about this, going, wait a minute, he's 12 years old, probably more like 16 today, on the verge of adulthood, not driving, but driving the donkey. Anyway, he goes missing, and Jerusalem is not a small town. This is a center of trade and political turmoil. Speaking of Nazi-occupied Poland, this is a Roman-occupied Jerusalem. The temple is a magnificent place, historical. There are places where Gentiles can go and cannot go at risk of death.
A lot of tension in that time period.
And he's lost.
Exactly.
In the desert, no water, no food. She had to be out of her mind.
Who did he meet? Where did he sleep? Why did he stay behind?
And that's all in here?
All my contemplation. And I had to come up with a realistic reason why he stayed. Because you see in this mystery, unlike, for example, the wedding of Cana, there is no miracle. There is no apparition. The heavens don't open. There is no voice of the Father. This is a classic rub between a child, a son, and his parents. And so the story begins in this book a week before they head down to Jerusalem to establish his home life. Who would his friends be? Did he go to school? What was his favorite food? Look at me, I like food, so there's a lot in there about food. There's a lot.
Food. This is a fascinating read. And now, you know what, because you could go on and on about it. I also want to talk about this, but this, I don't want to stop you because I want our viewers to go and get this book. Because it is fascinating, and it is correct me. It's the first fictional novel that Matthew Kelly's publishing firm, Beacon
Publishing, Dynamic Catholic. Yes,
Dynamic
it was their
Catholic,
first novel that they published. Everything else is nonfiction.
So
right.
this is
That's
great.
cool.
And Chris is going to be doing, we have our women's teas,
Yes.
and he's going to be doing this, talking about Mary and her relationship with the child, Jesus, as any mother, and her relationship with her children, her fathers and their children. And it's a marvelous read.
Thank you.
It really,
Thank you.
It's like, and it has prayers, and it's very scriptural based.
Oh, yeah,
So
because-
it's not like
No,
you're
no.
making this up.
Thank you
No.
for saying that. That's a key point. It's a novel. There has to be dialogue.
Right.
Obviously.
But I said, a lot of people aren't going to like me putting words in Jesus' mouth. So there are more than 300 scripture verses that he speaks woven into the dialogue. Google is a marvelous thing. Pope
It
Francis said that it's a gift from God.
It is.
It's amazing.
Technology, yeah.
How you could find virtually any subject in the Bible, of course,
Right.
and make it work into a conversation to advance.
I'm excited.
He meets his cousin, John the Baptist, because John lived right around the corner from the temple,
Right.
because his dad, remember, has the vision there that
Exactly.
predicts his
Right.
birth. He even meets Caiaphas.
Right. So it just brings it to life, and it takes a scripture passage that we gloss over because we all know how the story is, and you really delve into it, and you bring the humanity into it, and you make Jesus real.
Would you say it's for adults or younger readers, young adult readers?
Yes.
Yes.
I say it's accessible to young people. Some people might think it's YA, but young adult, but who reads Harry Potter? I've had a lot of adults tell me that it opened the doors for their contemplations, their understanding of history. It tries to establish
very
this key
historical.
point. Yeah, I'll leave you with this point on that. Unless we understand what the times are like, and I did a lot of research, we can't appreciate what Jesus is saying. So very quickly, when he's an adult, he goes to Samaria, and he meets this woman at the well, been married 5 times, living with a guy. Anyway, he makes a friendship with her, and he talks to her about water. She's schlepping water from Jacob's well, and he says, "Whoever drinks the water I shall give will never thirst. The water I shall give will well up in him like a spring of water to everlasting life." Now you and I can go, okay, big deal, water, vitamin water, tap water, filtered water. But this is a desert dweller's dream. So what does she say when he says this? She says, "Give me this water. I've been carrying this jug home." There are girls around the world who still can't go to school because they are lugging water home from someplace. So in order for us to relate to what he's saying, we have to understand the context. No different than today. You take a soundbite out of a news story, if you don't have the context, you don't know what's said.
Exactly.
Right? What's
and
meant.
And again, it's the Ignatian spirituality that's in here, and so I love it. I highly recommend it. So,
Thank you.
And now you also, besides doing a book, you have done a DVD on it's a video.
Co-authored, yeah.
right.
It's a DVD, and it is my favorite thing. So I'm a catechist of 14 first graders, and they are crazy, Chris. They are nuts. I can't get them to pay attention to anything. So this year we had class on St. Nicholas Day, and they were all, candied up and crazy.
Let me interject. The title of this is from Saint
to Santa.
Saint to Santa. Okay.
And so I showed them this video, and they were in love with it. We were getting all the way to Easter, and they're still asking me, "Can we watch the St. Nicholas video?" No, we cannot watch it on Easter, but they got so much out of it. And at the end of the year, that was one of the things they learned from the year was, we learned that Santa is St. Nicholas, and they're going through it, and they just loved it. And I loved how you made it so accessible to them, to these little 7-year-olds who were able to get something out of it and we're able to get religion and Jesus and saint out of something that's become so secular.
Well, I can't take very much of the credit. I'm the co-author of this script. The real original, the founder of it, if you will, is Father Joseph Marquis.
Right.
He spent his lifetime portraying Santa and St. Nicholas.
Oh, wow.
He's a Byzantine Catholic priest. I met him when he was the Santa for the Thanksgiving Day parade in Detroit, which was at that time it was just after Jail Hudson, the store in Detroit, which was later Marshall Fields, which was Night Now Macy's. It was their parade, and he was the Santa, and he was a Catholic deacon,
amazing.
became a Byzantine Rite deacon with permission of the cardinal in Detroit, and then was ordained. So he's been playing Santa or St. Nicholas for 40 years. He established the St. Nicholas Institute in Livonia, Michigan.
Right.
Anyway, he because we had worked together on the parade in 1986, he asked me to collaborate with him to write this story. And we worked with the Daughters of St. Paul,
Yes.
and with Catholic TV out of Boston,
familiar with
We are
Father
very familiar
Bishop
with them.
Robert Reed now.
Right, Bud Rogers.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you. So it was a really cool opportunity, and being a dad of two sons and now a grandfather, I was able to bring that side to it, to the kids' perspective. And Father and I had worked together on. We had written another thing that didn't quite take off. We won't go down that road, but it was an opportunity to collaborate, put a lot of experience together, and humanize Santa,
Very
and
much.
say, look, he was a real guy. He was a saint who lived, in the 300s.
They loved it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. They loved it. It's
Brilliant. And you know
beautiful.
what? We probably should have hit drum for 2 shows because we're running out of time. But I don't want. I have to close the show by telling our viewers that I mentioned earlier that we have a new men's ministry starting, and Chris is going to kick it off on Saturday, November 10th, with a program on his book, Dying to Be Happy. I highly recommend. Save the date now, gentlemen, because it's going to be wonderful.
Yes.
We're going to have a bountiful breakfast. If we feed you, you will come, of course, right? But watch our Facebook page. Watch our website for more information on Chris's programs that he'll be doing for Mayslake Ministries. And to get your books, Amazon?
Amazon.com, dynamiccatholic.com.
Okay.
Yep.
On behalf of Mayslake Ministries, I would like to thank the Village of Addison, Downers Grove, and Comcast Cable for the opportunity to join you on your spiritual journey. I hope that something we said today inspired you, perhaps challenged you, but most of all made you hungry for Jesus in your life. For more information on the many ways that Mayslake Ministries can help you on your spiritual journey, visit our website at mayslakeministries.org or call us at 630-852-9000. We are here for you. Until next time, God bless.